Although there aren't any like no-brainer ace type pitchers on Wednesday's slate for MLB DFS, there are a lot of guys who I would classify as being fun. And fun is kind of like a pretty vague term, but there are a lot of guys on this slate who can do some stuff pretty well and are pretty interesting. They may have some flaw in some way that prevents them from being like a Garrett Cole type guy or something like that, but they're fun. And I'm pretty excited for that for tonight. And I think that it's going to lead to a pretty interesting slate in a lot of ways you can play things for today. So let's dive on in, talk about those fun pitchers, and get you set for Wednesday night's slate. Welcome on into the solo shop. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Wednesday's 10-game main slate, with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. There are two weather notes for today. One of those is in New York, and it's not rain. It's all about the wind. In New York for the Mets and the Cardinals, winds are out to center at 12 miles per hour. It is also pretty humid in New York today, so I'd bump up bats there a bit. 79 degrees, which isn't bad for the slate either. So although the Mets Stadium is not a great one for offense, a little bit better today than usual as a result of the weather. Rain is possible in Atlanta for the Braves and the Rockies. Doesn't look heavy right now. It says drizzle is possible, but you'll check back on that one later. I'd bet that it plays, but just check back on it later to make sure that is true later on as well. So bump up to bats for Mets Cardinals, check back on weather for Braves and Rockies. We'll talk about the pitching preview in just one second. But first, hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that is entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you got to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win for $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's talk about that pitching preview for today. Starting off at the top with Julio Urias, who is the highest salary pitcher on FanDuel for today. He is $10,300. John Means is $9,400. Sean Manaea, $92. We have Antonio Senzatela at $9,000, followed by Ranger Suarez, Jose Urquidy, Cal Quantrill, John Means, and Huascar Ynoa, all guys at $8,000 or higher. So that's second tier pretty meaty for today. And when you look at this slate, because there aren't a lot of like super high strikeout guys, there's not a Cole type pitcher here on this slate. It means we don't need as many strikeouts to be viable for DFS. We don't need to have a guy with a 30% strikeout rate to be in the hunt when it comes to our lineups for tonight. I think that gives us leeway to use Julio Urias in a plus matchup. Urias is facing the Diamondbacks. It is absolutely a matchup we want to target. They do have good numbers against lefties. The Diamondbacks do. But those numbers feel deceptive. They have a 106 WRC plus against lefties. I'm fine overlooking the raw numbers because they're on the road. They're not a team I fear overall with the lefties. So I will use Urias here. He's a good pitcher, even if he's not a high strikeout one. That's kind of what I mentioned. Like, he's not like a no-brainer ace type, but he's a good pitcher, like a good real-world pitcher. He's been using his curveball more over his past 12 starts, and he has a 24% strikeout rate. That's not tremendous for DFS, but it's also not terrible. And again, on this slate, it's more viable than others. The rest of the profile for Urias, beyond the strikeouts, is stellar. He has a 5% walk rate. He's letting up a 27% hard hit rate. That is the best number on the slate. He has a 3.89 skill interactive ERA. When you combine good strikeout rate, great walk rate, great hard hit rate, that's why his ERA is 1.67. Is a little bit fluky? Sure. But he's good, so I'm not expecting this thing to balloon all that much. And we've seen Urias let up more than 2 earned runs just once this entire time. And that was at Coors Field. He can get some strikeouts too. He has 7, 8, and 7 over his past 3 starts. He had 7 strikeouts across 5 shutout innings in his 1 start against Arizona in this stretch. So we see in this matchup, he's done well. There's a lot of safety here, and it does come with some upside as well. So on this slate, I think this is a pretty good combination. I think that Urias is a really fun pitcher. I will put him at the top of my list for cash games and for tournaments and be hyper in on him for today. Number 2 for me is going to be Huascar Ynoa, and he just faced the Rockies 2 starts ago, which means they're familiar with him, and that's kind of a bummer because I like everything else about his profile, and I would feel really good about Inoa if it weren't for that. Still like him, but I feel even better if that were not the case. I used Inoa last week, largely because it was a small slate, but he pitched well there. He had 7 strikeouts across 5 innings of 2-run ball, which wasn't dominant, but the strikeouts, 7 strikeouts in 5 innings, that was good. He had a 12.4% swinging strike rate there, and he had a mark of 14.3% against the Rockies at Coors Field, and now he gets them at home. Inoa has pitched well since he came off the IL. His ERA, 3.50. His skill interactive ERA is around there too at 3.85. He has a 26% strikeout rate. He's letting up a 33% earned rate with a 36% fly ball rate. Those are good numbers. Both the batted ball numbers are better than average on this slate specifically. And the Rockies are a very beatable team. They have a 77 WRC plus against righties. That's the lowest on the slate. Their 23% strikeout rate is not super high, but it's also not a negative. It's a low walk rate, a low fly ball rate. So I think that Inoa will pitch really well here, and that's enough to be viable on this slate. I'll put him second behind Urias here and feel pretty good about it. The reason he's not like a no-brainer type guy, again, is because the Rockies did just see him, but I do think that for $8,400, that's a concern I'm okay with, and still putting him as our top value of the day. For the third slot, I can go back up into the stud tier because Inoa is the value play for today. I'm going to go Sean Manaea. He and Ranger Suarez were very close for me in terms of this third slot. Suarez has a better matchup, much better matchup against the Cubs, and he's at home. That's good for him. I just think that Manaea is the better talent, and I think I'm going to put him above Suarez for that reason. I'm not going to fault you if you decide to go Suarez over Manaea. Totally okay. I just love everything about Manaea outside of the matchup. I think the matchup kind of sucks, honestly. He's facing the Royals. They have just a 19% strikeout rate against lefties, which is easily the lowest in the slate. And I don't want to use pitchers against that very often, because even if they're not going to, do a whole lot, we need strikeouts. We need that juice to really make a difference. So I don't want to target pitchers against the Royals, especially lefties. But Manaea is so good. We've got 11 starts on Manaea, with his off-speed pitch being much higher velocity than it was earlier on this year. I think he just changed the way he was throwing it. And in that time, he has a 3.26 skill interactive ERA. He has a 29% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate. He is still letting up a lot of hard contact. That's why his ERA is bad. That's why he's had starts that have been terrible. That's what happens when you let up hard contact. But the Royals have just basically 2 dudes who hit for a lot of power against lefties, Salvador Perez and Alberto Mondesi. And I'm scared of those guys. But overall, this is not a high-power team. Basically, what that means, outside of Perez and Mondesi, it's tougher for the Royals to exploit the big weakness that Manaea has. We've seen Manaea beast out in tough matchups recently. His past 2 starts come against the Blue Jays and the White Sox, 2 of the best teams in baseball versus lefties. Manaea had 9 strikeouts across 7 innings in both those matchups. So I don't like this matchup. Again, I think it's bad. It's a bad matchup, but I think the talent matters here. So I wouldn't fault you for going Suarez over Manaea. We'll talk about Tyler McGill and things to watch too. Maybe you could consider him, but for me, I will go Manaea and see what happens. I tend to be a lot higher on Manaea than others. He might not be someone who you want to go to tonight. That's totally fine. He's third for a reason, but I do think that there is enough there where I'm okay getting some exposure, taking advantage of the talent that he has, and hoping the Royals will whiff a little bit more for tonight. As far as the stacks go, we're going back to a team that really burned me last night. That's the Houston Astros. They've been in play for 3 straight days now. They were awesome 2 nights ago, not so awesome last night, but I think they're a top option again here against Kohei Arihara. I stacked against Arihara a bunch at the beginning of the year, and he made me look silly with some really good outings in there. He was starting to regress toward his peripherals. The results were getting worse at the end of April, beginning of May, and then he went on the IL, which is a bummer, because it's fun to see new pitchers in Major League Baseball, and we haven't had him for about 4 months, so that's been annoying. And Arihara hasn't been bad since he came back. He's let up 3 runs across 8 innings and 2 starts, but those starts were against the Rockies at home, so in Texas, and the Diamondbacks. Those are very different matchups than facing the Astros. They have a 114 WRC plus against righties. So overall, Arihara's peripherals say stacking against him is the right play. He has a 5.35 skill interactive ERA across 9 starts, with a 48% hard hit rate, a 39% fly ball rate. His ERA is 5.89. Even the results have gone to a point where we can feel good stacking against him. His expected ERA at Baseball Savant is 7.63. So it's good for him to be back. I do have those starts where it burned me stacking against him lingering in my head, but I do think we should stack against him with the Astros for tonight. Now, if we want to use some of the high-salaried hitters here, we will need some value, but I think the good thing is the Astros have shown us that they've got value guys we can trust on this team. And with Michael Brantley likely not going to play again until Friday, we're probably going to get two of them in there. Jose Siri is my favorite of the value options. I do like Chas McCormick and Jake Myers as well. Siri, disgusting in AAA, had a couple dingers 2 nights ago, had a stolen base last night. McCormick, a 190 ISO against righties. Myers is at 125 versus righties for his ISO, but does make decent contact. So I'll use any of those 3 guys. I'm totally fine with that, but I would rank them Siri 1, McCormick 2, then Myers. Because I've been kind of going on and off with McCormick and Myers, I'd assume it's probably Siri and Myers tonight because McCormick was in there before, but I do think overall Siri is kind of the no-brainer. I'd assume he gets in there because of how well he's played. And I think that we should be in on him if that assumption is correct. The number 2 stack is also a pretty fun one. It's not as good of a team, but it's a fun stack. It's Cleveland facing Griffin Jax. Jax has a really big batted ball problem, and he doesn't get enough strikeouts to overcome it. Jax has made 8 starts since he joined the Twins rotation full-time. In those 8 starts, he's letting up a 44% hard hit rate with a 49% fly ball rate. Those are ideal numbers for stacking. They come with a 17% strikeout rate, so Jax is letting up a lot of balls in play, and those balls are being crushed. That has bit him in a pretty big way because he's allowed at least 4 earned runs in 4 straight starts. Not all those were against elite teams. He faced the Brewers once and the Royals once. He did face Cleveland once in this time, and he did pretty well. He lasted 6 innings, let up just 2 earned runs, but he also let up 2 more unearned runs. The hard hit rate against him in that game was 48%. So although the results weren't bad, he probably should have gotten knocked around a bit more than he did. I'm not sure Jax will escape as luckily in the rematch here between these 2 teams. That makes Cleveland a really solid option against him for tonight. Now, the top guys here for Cleveland are going to be Jose Ramirez, Franmil Reyes, and Bobby Bradley. That's kind of a no-brainer to me, at least. Those are the 3 guys you want to turn to first, and I want to stack them first. Next guy up, the 4th guy in the stack, above, some of the guys like Bradley Zimmer. Maybe I shouldn't go above Bradley Zimmer, but I do think Miles Straw is number 4. He doesn't have for power, but he steals so many bags that kind of doesn't matter. He's very capable of having a ceiling game with his legs. So he'd be number 4 in ranking out the stacking options here. I do get kind of scared because Zimmer's been playing better recently, but I'll go Straw slightly above Zimmer. Zimmer is very much a fine consideration for me, but I'll go Straw by a hair over him in terms of ranking them. But they're all behind Ramirez, Reyes, and Bradley for today. For the 3rd stack, we're going to take advantage of the good hitting weather in New York. The Mets are facing John Lester, and Lester is doing some things pretty well right now, but I do think the Mets can handle him. Specifically, Lester is keeping the ball on the ground. He has been leaning more on his cutter and his sinker over his past 5 starts. The plate discipline numbers there are terrible. He has as many walks as strikeouts, but he has let up just a 33% fly ball rate. His hard hit rate is lower than you'd want it to be at 36%. That's helped him rack up a 2.89 ERA in this time. So that's good. That's why, the Mets aren't higher on this list. But Lester hasn't been perfect. He let up a couple home runs to the Reds last week. He let up 4 runs to the same Mets team in 4 1/3 innings. So it's not a slam dunk because, again, Lester's doing some things well. But the Mets have guys who do loft it against lefties, and the hitting conditions here are pretty good. I think that's enough for me to take the dive and rock with the Mets here. As far as the Mets go, for the individual batters, you do want to prioritize Pete Alonso and Javier Baez. Pretty obvious, but Francisco Lindor's salary is up there too with those guys. And his overall numbers are relative to his baseline. They're kind of poor. But if you look at Lindor since he returned from the IL, he has a 307 isolated slugging percentage. He has good batted ball numbers. The sample versus lefties specifically, because I think it does matter a bit more because he's a switch hitter. But against lefties, just 29 plate appearances, he is crushing the ball. So his season-long ISO is 150 against lefties. I'd view him more favorably than that. I'm going to put Alonso first because the upside's insane. But I'm okay viewing Lindor as being in that same tier as Baez and Alonso for today and feeling pretty good about that. So I think that we should feel good about the Mets here today, ranking them 3rd in terms of stacks. Let's finish up here with things to watch. The other side of that game is interesting from both a stacking and a pitching perspective. We got Tyler McGill facing the Cardinals, and he's getting strikeouts recently. He has a 29% strikeout rate over his past 6 starts with more fastballs, but he's letting up crazy amounts of hard contact. I think you can justify using McGill as a pitcher, or you can justify using one-offs against him. I might be more inclined to consider him as a pitcher because he has pretty extreme platoon splits where he's good against righties, bad against lefties, and the Cardinals don't have a lot of good lefties on this team. That's why Dylan Carlson's kind of maybe the one-off I'd consider here. But again, I think it's a consideration at pitcher. The batted ball numbers really scare me. And that's why I can't go above Manaea and stuff like that. But it's worth considering. McGill has an upside game in his range of outcomes. 2 other spots I'm okay stacking are in the same game, actually. Those are the White Sox against the Angels. We got the White Sox facing Jason Junk. Junk was not a big strikeout guy in the minors and didn't get many ground balls. That's a good stacking profile. The reason the White Sox aren't higher on this list is that Junk might suppress hard contacts. His numbers with the Yankees AAA team kind of hint at that, I would say. So I like the White Sox, but that's why they're not higher. I think there's a possibility Junk does a good job of suppressing hard contact. Angels facing Dallas Keuchel. We've talked about his struggles plenty by this point. He's let up 5 earned runs in 4 straight starts. Clearly, we can use hitters against that. Jared Walsh and Shohei Ohtani are both lefties, facing a lefty here, but they both hit for power against lefties. Walsh isn't good, but he hits for power still. Joe Adell did not play yesterday, ran into a wall, so he's a little banged up, but if he's in there, he hits lefties well. Max Stassi is $2,400. He's the other guy I consider here. So both the White Sox and Angels considerations as far as stacks behind the teams we discussed in the Astros, Cleveland, and the Mets. Let's do some home run calls for today, and both these are from the same team. So I apologize. That's maybe kind of boring, but hey, whatever. I think that they just had the best hitting conditions against a pitcher who lets up a lot of fly balls, a lot of hard contact. So we're going hard to Cleveland here. I had to decide, do I go Jose Ramirez or Franmil Reyes for the boring one? It was tough. I decided to go Ramirez. I know target field tends to favor righties. So maybe I should go Reyes, but Ramirez, the fly ball rate versus righties is just insane. So I'm going to go Jose Ramirez, the boring one. The fun one is Bobby Bradley, another lefty here. So again, kind of a downer because of the way the platoon splits work at target field, but I think Bradley's got good power. They can go deep against Jack. So the home run calls for today, both on Cleveland, Jose Ramirez and Bobby Bradley. That is all that we have here for today on the solo shop. But we are back once again, later on today for our regular MLB Q&A. Now, if you've been listening the past week or so, we've moved the MLB Q&A to 4:30. For today, it's at 4 because there's no NFL Q&A for today. NFL Q&A every day except Wednesday. So on Wednesdays, the MLB Q&A will be at 4 p.m., back to 4:30 Thursday and Friday. So if you want to tune in, get your question answered on air, swing by the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages at 4 and get those questions in then. If you got questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. We have our PGA podcast. Brandon Gadula recorded that yesterday, getting you set for this weekend's event. We have our Week 1 NFL Recap podcast posted. Week 2 preview going up tomorrow. We have UFC and NASCAR this weekend. So a lot of good stuff. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Good luck to you all tonight. Have fun with the enticing pitchers for today. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.